With that, today I'm just going to continue on with a few selections from the Buddhist Chronicles about the early life of the Buddha. And then I've got some suttas that I'll share here. So let me go ahead and share the screen. So last week we were talking about the palaces. And one second here. Let's see. Yeah. We were talking about the palaces, and the king had, well, let me just read this here. The Bodhisatta, Prince Siddhartha, grew up in great comfort and luxury, enjoying such delights as playing in the water of the celestial lakes, covered and graced with five kinds of lotus, as said above, wearing very soft and smooth garments, which were newly made and produced in Kasi country, being at all times given cover and protection against heat, cold, dust, mist, and snow with white umbrellas of devas and humans. When he had grown to the age of 16 years, King Suddhodana thought, "It is time to build mansions for my son." And he had the most celebrated and skilled architects, carpenters, masons, sculptors, and painters summoned to the palace for discussion. He then gave orders for construction of three palaces, named Rama Golden Palace, Sarama Palace, and Subha Golden Palace, which were specially designed to suit the weather conditions of the three seasons. After making necessary preliminary preparations, such as groundbreaking at the chosen site and at the time indicated as propitious by the stars. Many things in India are done by astrology, the Vedic type of astrology. In fact, getting married is you go to the astrologer and see what date that you want to get married. You do the full chart of the partners to take a look at that. There's all kinds of different things that they do to figure out, the who's going to get along with who and who's the right partner. But in any case, the three palaces were of equal length, breadth, and height. They differed only in the number of tiers in the spires. Uh, so we had the Rama Palace was built for the winter, Sarama summer, Subha rainy season. The Rama Palace had nine-tiered spired. The structure and room formations were designed to keep the floors somewhat low so as to retain warmth, and meticulous care was taken in the arrangement of lion-propped windows and ventilators to prevent elements of cold from outside, such as snow, mist, and breeze, from entering inside. In Bodh it can get very cold. When I was there with Kirsten Delson and others, Banti Kusala, it was December, and we had our coats on and we had gloves ready. So I think it got into the 30s, if I recall. I don't think snow's a thing, but certainly it was cold and the fires were going. Um, Painters, this is fun. I think I talked about it last week. Painters also drew pictures of blazing fires and flames on the walls, central planks, roofs of the said palatial mansion to dispel coldness on seeing them. Festoons of perfumes, flowers, and pearls were hung, dangling here and there at appropriate places. Maybe you should consider putting some fires on your walls if you're living in the north with the snow. Just think about what you could do to heat things up around you. The ceilings were canopied with fabrics of pure wool and silk, which were very soft and smooth and warmth-giving, which were adorned with stars of gold, silver, and rubies, giving out bright and flaming colors. Besides, there were woolen partitions and gauze curtains adorned with velvet and woolen shawls, which were very soft and smooth to the touch. Velvet garments and woolen apparel appropriate for the cold season were also kept in readiness for wear. In the winter season, nourishing seasonal food, such as hot, spicy delicacies, were well prepared in readiness. To keep the room warm, windows were kept open in the day and closed at night. Then the summer. The summer palace, 5 tiers. Structure and room formations were designed to provide ventilation. The tiers were built high, windows and shutters kept spacious and wide, to procure as much breeze and coolness as required from outside. The main doors and windows were kept not too secure. Some doors had perforations, others had nettings made of iron, gold, and silver. The walls, central posts, roofs decorated with paintings of blue, red, and white lotus to give soothing impressions to the observers. Newly made pots filled with water to the brim were installed near the windows, and placed therein were aquatic flowering plants, such as blue, red, white lotus, and lotus with 100 petals. Mechanical devices, such as fountains and showers, were installed to cool and freshen appropriate places, stimulating the rainy season, when greenness pervaded the scenery. Inside the mansion, flower pots and barrels filled with scented mud and slime were placed at suitable corners, and in them planted the 5 varieties of lotus. The ceilings are canopied with cotton fabric, soft, smooth, generating a cooling effect. Besides, there were golden partitions and soft, thin curtains, which were beautifully and marvelously decorated. Floor carpets of very white cloth, which were capable of making the atmosphere cool. Sets of very thin white garments suitable for summer wear were also kept ready to wear. Cold and savory food, having the quality of coolness, were also prepared. And I imagine this is part of Ayurveda in the sense of foods were you had a warmth. You had warm food, spicy food, cool food, and things to reduce or increase the warmth of the body, and so on. On the roof of Sarama Palace was hung a network of small tinkling golden bells, producing sounds which were sweet, soft, and pleasant, and excelling the sounds of the 5 kinds of celestial music. Ceilings made of fine gold sheets with very tiny holes were fixed under the roofing. When the water from the 4 ponds on the 4 sides of the mansion was pumped up by mechanical devices onto the ceilings, it fell on the ceilings and trickled down through tiny holes like raindrops, as if it were raining. So they had like this mechanical misting type of thing going on inside. Above the ceilings of golden sheets were spread out dried sheets of buffalo hide. Then pebbles were lifted aloft by machines to the rooftop, and from there released to fall on the stretched buffalo hides. The sound produced by these falling pebbles resembled the rumbling of thunder during the rainy season. So they had their own sound machines and can produce rain, thunder, just to cool everything down. 108 huge pots made of gold and silver were filled with perfumed water and placed around the royal bed, which was in an enclosure of an embroidered netting with blue lotus designs. To have the effect of cool and pleasant atmosphere, blue, red, and white lotus were planted in large bronze barrels, filled to the brim with scented mud, and placed everywhere. The lotus bloomed when touched by the rays of the sun. All species of honeybees came inside the mansion and hovered around these lotus flowers, sucking their sweet nectar. Imagine that, a bunch of bees buzzing around. That would be kind of interesting. Thus, the Sarama Palace, the summer resort of the prince, was always pervaded with very sweet fragrance of the flowers. The main door and the windows of that summer residence were kept closed by day and open by night to have the cool wind element. When the prince took up his residence in the palace, when it was time for playing in the water, pebbles were thrown on the sheets of the buffalo hides, as has been mentioned above, to produce roaring sounds similar to that of thunder. Water pumped up to the ceilings, trickled down in drops through the fine holes therein, as if it were raining. At that time, the prince, wearing blue garment and robe, and adorning himself in blue, reveled in the water, enjoying its coolness for the day, in the company of 40,000 attendants and followers. That's a big palace, who were also dressed and adorned in blue with their bodies perfumed. On the four sides of the summer palace were four ponds in which water was emerald green, cool and clean and covered all over with 5 kinds of lotus. Aquatic birds such as swans, ducks, herons of various hues, rising from the ponds on the east, flew across the palace, making melodious sounds continuously, and went down and gamboled in the pond on the west. In this manner, these water birds from the west pond flew to the east, those from the north lake to the south, those from the south pond to the north, and so on. The summer palace, even during the winter months, was pleasant as in the rainy season. Now, the rainy season is just a combination of both of them. So we'll skip that. The next thing I was going to talk about was the archery skill. One second, I need to adjust. It seems that we're in that period here where we're in the summer and the winter season all at the same time. You can have the air conditioning on in the afternoon and the heat on in the morning. So I never know what the heck's going to come on around here. And then the heat is on and the air conditioning comes on to cool things down. So it's a little bit of a interesting. We can have temperature changes from 29 to we actually had 29 to 85 a few days ago. Luckily, it's cooled off from 85. So archery, it's very interesting. People didn't know much about this prince, so let's get into that. After King Suddhodana, the royal father, had the 3 palatial mansions constructed for his son in such grandeur and magnificence, which no succession of kings had ever enjoyed before, he thought to himself, "My son has reached the age of 16. After crowning him king with the white umbrella raised, I shall watch him enjoying the luxury and glory of kingship." He then ordered messages to be sent to his 80,000 Sakyan relatives. That's a lot of, think about Thanksgiving. Wow. "Dear Sakyan princes, my son has come of age and is 16 years old now. I will crown him king. All Sakyan princes should bring their daughters who have come to age to my palace." When the Sakyan princes received the royal message from King Suddhodana, they refused to comply with his request, replying in derogatory terms, "Prince Siddhartha lacks education. Although possessing a pleasant personal appearance, not having acquired any skill of a livelihood, he will not be able to, let's see where to go. He will not be able to discharge his obligation to support a family. So we cannot accede to the demands of King Suddhodana and give our daughters." So he's looking for a wedding partner for his prince. And these people said, "Well, who is this guy? Does he know anything? He's brought up in luxury, but who is he?" Well, this is a little disturbing to the king. On receiving the replies from the Sakyan princes, the fathers of the princesses, King Suddhodana went to the prince and related the matter. The prince asked, "My dear father, I do not have to learn anything. What skill do you want me to display?" King Suddhodana replied, "Dear son, you should demonstrate to the royal relatives the art of archery with a bow which requires 1,000 units of weight to draw." That's a heavy bow. Prince Siddhartha then said, "In that case, royal father, have it proclaimed by the beat of the drums in the royal city that on the seventh day from today, there will be a display of archery by me." King Suddhodana accordingly had it proclaimed widely all over the kingdom of Kapilavatthu by the beat of the drums. After the proclamation had been made by means of beating the drum, arrangements were made to prepare a site for the prince's demonstration of archery skills and to construct a decorated viewing panel for the ministers, palace ladies, retinue, service personnel, soldiers, and distinguished royal relatives. On the seventh day, when all arrangements were completed, the king with his ministers, military commanders, and guests were all seated in their respective places. The prince, after taking his seat on the gem-studded throne in the center of the open ground, took hold of the big bow handed to him by the royal attendants. The bow required 1,000 men to draw it, or the bow required 1,000 units or 2,000 units of weight, or pala, to draw. So there's some question here as to really what does that mean? Is it 1,000 men, which seems a bit much, or is it 1,000 units of weight? In any case, it was hard to draw. Sitting cross-legged on the throne, the prince held the bow in his left hand, twisted the bowstring around one big toe with which it was pulled to make it taut. Then he struck the bowstring with his right hand to adjust it. The vibrating sound emitted from the string was so loud that it echoed throughout the city of Kapilavatthu, which appeared as if it was on the verge of flying up into the sky. Thereupon some people asked, "What is that sound?" And some people replied, "This is the roaring sound of thunder." Others, however, said, "Oh, you do not know. This is not the sound of thunder. It is the sound produced when the Sakyan prince Siddhartha, so graceful in form and resplendent in complexion, drew the bow, which requires 1,000 men or 2,000 units of weight, to stretch and struck the bowstring. All the 80,000 Sakyan princes and royal relatives, witnessing the spectacular display by the prince of striking and adjusting the bowstrings, were exceedingly delighted. So he hasn't even shot an arrow yet, and they're very excited. So then it goes on to say he sent for some famous master archers, and he wanted them to be there to also demonstrate what was going to take place. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to go back in time. Okay, hopefully it's, I'm going to reset it. That's okay. Let's see here. Well, we'll just go back over here. And I am going to show you that, yeah. So here is, we're going to go back in time a little bit. And this is a past life of the Bodhisatta as Prince Asadisa. This shows where he learned his archery skills and how in this lifetime he just remembered them. And this is why he's so good at what he does. The prince, a bodhisatta, just demonstrated his skill in archery not only in his last human existence as Prince Siddhartha, but also while he was still in the early stages of parami fulfillment in his existence as Prince Asadisa. Here follows a brief account of this episode. While still fulfilling the perfections, he was born in one of the existences as Prince Asadisa, the eldest son of King Brahmadatta. Now, if you read through the Jataka tales and many of the suttas, there's many lives talked about under King Brahmadatta of the city of Varanasi. He spent many lifetimes there. When he attained the age of 16, he proceeded to the university town of Takasila, where under the world-famous teacher, Disa Pamoka, he learned the 3 Vedas together with the 18 branches of learning to the highest stage of perfection. In particular, he had mastered without any equals the archery skills. When he returned to Varanasi after completion of his study, he refused the kingship offered to him as the elder son in accordance with the dying wishes of his father, King Brahmadatta. The ministers then elected his younger brother, Prince Brahmadatta, to be king. The elder Prince Asadisa continued to live the princely life in a peaceful manner, but the sycophants and opportune seekers serving the king in order to sow the seeds of discord maligned Prince Asadisa, saying to the king, "Prince Asadisa is planning to seize your throne." Believing these slanderous words, the king ordered the arrest of his elder brother, Prince Asadisa, the Bodhisatta. On being informed of the said matter by a well-wishing palace attendant, Prince Asadisa felt deeply hurt and left the kingdom of Varanasi for another country. From there he had word sent to the king that a master archer had arrived at the palace gate, seeking permission to be in the king's service. So what's happened here is Prince Asadisa is sending word to King Brahmadatta, there's this archer, and maybe you should go talk to him. But you'll find out the archer is going to be him. This sent to the king that a master archer had arrived at the palace gate, seeking permission to be in the king's service. Summoning the master archer to his presence, the king questioned him as to the remuneration he sought for his services. Agreeing to be employed on a salary of 100,000 pieces of silver per annum, Prince Asadisa remained henceforth in the service of the king as an archer. The incumbent archers were jealous of the newcomer, being thus paid a salary of 1,000 a year, and spoke in disparagement of him. So this is his son. He doesn't even know it. One day, while in the royal garden near the auspicious stone slab, the king saw a bunch of mangoes high up on top of a big mango tree. Considering it is impossible to climb up and pluck the mango bunch, the king summoned the old archers and asked them, "Can you shoot down that bunch of mangoes with an arrow?" They submitted unanimously, "Your Majesty, there is no trouble for us to shoot it down, but Your Majesty has seen our performance many a time. Let the new archer, who is earning more than us, bring it down. Come on, let's see this guy. What can he do? Maybe he'll embarrass himself." So the king then sent for Prince Asadisa and asked him, "My son, can you shoot down that bunch of mangoes with an arrow?" The prince replied, "Your Majesty, if I have the permission to use the place where you are reclining, the job can be done." The king is just looking straight up and seeing this bunch of mangoes. So he just needs him to be just stand aside while he just stands right underneath the mangoes. He made this request as the stalk of the mango bunch was directly above the place where the king had been reclining. The king moved out from his reclining position and permitted the prince to shoot from there. Unlike other archers, Prince Asadisa did not go about carrying his bow in his hand ostentatiously. He moved about with his bow folded and wrapped up in a cloth. He had an enclosure formed of screens and curtains. Then entering the enclosure, so this is around this place where he's going to shoot from. He had this enclosure formed. Then entering the enclosure to take off the white outer garment, he changed into red attire. He also then girded up his loins and had a red sash wrapped tightly around his chest, after which he took out the sword from inside the bag and hung it on the left shoulder. He then put on a cloak of the color of gold, and with the quiver slung on the back, held the large bow made of ram's horn, each sector of which was fastened properly at the joints, and set the bowstrings of coral red color, and with a frontlet of precious gems adorning his head, and rotating the sharp arrow with his fingernails, he parted the curtain and came out like a Naga youth emerging from the earth. Then going straight to the place for shooting, he asked the king, "Your Majesty, shall I shoot down the bunch of mangoes with the ascending arrow or with a descending one?" The king replied, "My son, I had seen many archers bring down fruit with the ascending arrow, but I have not seen archers shoot them down with the descending one. I want you to shoot and cut the stem with the descending arrow." The prince replied, "Your Majesty, this first arrow I am shooting will go up as far as the Katumaharajika abode of Devas. I beseech you to be patient and wait for the arrow's descent from the said Deva abode." "So be it," said the king. He further explained thus, "Your Majesty, this first arrow I am shooting, on its way up, will cleave half the stalk of the mango bunch, and when it descends from the sky, it will cut the remaining half precisely, without missing it, even by a hair's breadth, and bring down the bunch. Behold now, Your Majesty." Uttering these bold words, the prince shot the arrow, which went skywards at an accelerating speed. The said arrow went up after cleaving half the mango stalk, as the prince had said. The prince, judging the arrow may have reached the Katumaharajika Deva abode by now, shot a second arrow with a greater force and speed than the first one. The second arrow went up and struck the tail feather of the first arrow to make it turn and fall downwards, and itself went up and up till it reached the Tavatim's abode of Devas, where it was caught by the Tavatim's of Devas. That's kind of interesting. The sound produced by the descending arrow, cutting through strong winds in the atmosphere, roared loudly like that of thunder, as if to make the earth tremble. When people asked, "What is that sound?" the prince replied, "It is the sound of the first arrow descending." He calmed the fears of the people, who were feeling anxious lest the arrow might fall on them, saying, "Do not be afraid. The arrow will not be allowed to fall on the ground. I will catch it without causing harm to anybody." The said arrow, on coming down, cut the remaining half of the stalk of the mango bunch without veering a hair's breadth from it, in the full view of the spectators, and fell downwards, carrying the bunch of mangoes with it. Prince Asadisa clutched in midair the falling arrow with one hand and the mango bunch with the other, not allowing them to fall to the ground. The king and thousands of spectators marveled at the astonishing and magnificent display and exclaimed, "We had never before witnessed such a wonderful demonstration." They applauded and praised the prince by clapping their arms with open hands, snapping their fingers, and throwing up into the air their turbans and headgears. The king's audience, being pleased and delighted, lavished him with presents and rewards worth a crore of money. The king showered on the prince archer much bounty and a large retinue, which may be likened to a heavy downpour of rain. This is the description of the wonderful skill in the archery of Prince Asadisa. In this manner, the Prince Siddhartha, the Bodhisatta, had demonstrated the extraordinary, wonderful skill in archery, also at the time when he was born as Prince Asadisa, in this last existence as Prince Siddhartha, He also demonstrated to the same assembly not only the aforesaid skill in archery, namely the 12 minor skills, the 4 major skills, the 7 kinds of shooting, to pierce through massive bodies, but all skills, dexterity, and accomplishments which a prince should learn and master. Only then the doubts and suspicions of the 80,000 royal relatives, does he ever have manly accomplishments, were cleared away. So that kind of showed him. This is a past life, but he goes on to actually do this in front of everybody, and it's quite a kind of a long process. So we won't do that, but just given he knows how to shoot an arrow. So with that, one other thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll just stop sharing, is when he goes out to see, when he's in the palace, and he's been enjoying these palaces until he's 29 years old. Now, there's the story of where he goes out and he sees all the signs, the old man, the sick man, and all of that. It's there's some details that were kind of missing here. And the details were that what happens is there's a royal garden that he's never visited. And so he tells the king he wants to go to the royal garden. And the king says, "Oh, well, okay, great, great." And so the king has flowers put on the road. The road's completely redone. Everything is made to be amazing. But also the king is aware that outside the palace, on the way, there could be old people, sick people, and he doesn't want the prince to see this. He's just keeping him away from this. It was told to him that this boy would either become a wheel-turning monarch, meaning he would be the most amazing king that there would be, or he would be a Buddha, a recluse. And the king wanted him to be that wheel-turning monarch. So he's trying to avoid any indication that there's suffering, that there's just only peace and happiness. And for that period of time, there is. However, the devas have a sneaky plan. And on the way to the royal garden, the devas put a old person in there. One of the devas goes down and takes the form of an old person that's bent over and gray hair, and this sort of thing, and is walking along. And so as the prince goes to the garden, he looks over and he asks his attendant, like, what is that? What's with the gray hair and the broken teeth? And so the attendant says, "Oh, Your Majesty, this is an old person." And of course the prince says, "You mean we're going to get old like that?" And he says, yes, this is going to happen. He says, "Turn around this chariot. I'm not going to the garden. I'm going to go back to the palace." And he goes back to the palace, and he thinks about everything that happened. And there's a period of time, and then the king finds out that there was an old person. He's not happy. He calls all his guards and says, "What happened?" And the guards said, "Well, there was nobody there." And so he puts on more guards. So the Bodhisatta says, "I want to go back to the garden and see this garden again." So the king puts more guards. He puts them even further out to make sure that nobody gets into the area where he's going. And the prince goes to the garden. And the prince goes to the garden. And guess what? Right by the side of the road, there's a person lying down, and they're sick. And they look terrible, and there's stuff on them, and it just looks terrible. And the prince says, and this is another deva. And the prince says, "Well, what is going on here?" "Well, this is, you're liable to be sick and to get these diseases and not feel so well." And so he said, "Well, this is no good. Turn it around. We're going back." So he didn't see all of these things at once. He actually saw them one by one. And of course, the king is upset, and he's putting on even more guards and all this. And so the Bodhisattva says, "I'm going to go to that garden." So of course he goes out again, and what does he see? He sees a dead person lying by the road. He says, why is that person not moving? What is going on? Well, that person is dead. He's not here. And so he turns around everything again and goes back, and the king is upset, and he puts out even more guards. And the Bodhisattva says, after some period of time, all right, I'm going back to the garden. So then he goes back to the garden, and well, we've run out of the signs, right? Well, what's the final sign? It is a recluse. He sees an ascetic wandering along the road, and he says, "What is that?" He just has some robes on and head is shaved. What is going on here? So he tells the driver of the chariot to go see him, go talk to him. And he goes and talks to this ascetic. And he says, the ascetic is a deva. There's no real ascetics at the time, it says in the commentaries here. Of course, they're probably, well, I mean, it says there's kind of, they're not really around. So the devas create this recluse. So he goes and talks to the recluse. And he says, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" The recluse says, "I am practicing the 10 wholesome virtues." And the Bodhisattva says, "What is that?" He says, "I understand birth and death, and I understand that there is suffering in the world, and therefore I want to do as much good as possible, and try to get out of this, and try to find some sort of enlightenment." So the Bodhisattva is talking to him at length about everything that he's doing. At this moment, he's now married to Yasodhara, and his wife, back at the palace, gives birth to his son, and his son Rahula. And the king sees that his son was born, and he sends word, and he's talking to the recluse, and the king sent word, and they say, a prince, you have a son now that was born. And he instead he says, "Oh my goodness, it's Rahu, the king of the Asuras. He's bounding me. He's keeping me from what I need to do." And so he doesn't say, "Oh wow, great, a baby." He says, "It's a bond. It is going to keep me from finding out what is going on." And in the meantime, the king hears about this, isn't really happy about it, but he then names the son Rahula, or Bond. And now the Bodhisattva has a son. So he goes back to the palace, and of course he sees the son. He goes, well, he goes into his wife's bedroom, and she is sleeping. And he goes inside, and he wants to at least just hold the son, but he thinks that he'll wake her up. So he doesn't do that. He just leaves, and he leaves, and he starts his quest to become the Buddha. And there endeth the story of the 4 signs. So I'll just leave it at that. And there was the occasion where he was watching the dancing girls, and then in the middle of the night, he looks around and he sees the girls they have spit coming out their mouth, and they're all asleep, and some have clothes on, some don't, and they're drunk, and they're just a wreck. And he goes on, and he understands sensual pleasures at that point. Uh, so that's as much as we're going to talk about in terms of the Buddha's early life. Now, I do have a few suttas which we can look at and find out what is craving. So I'm going to share that. So hopefully this is the right one. So there's a sutta. People say, well, what is craving? What does that mean? And the Buddha does describe craving, and there's 18 types of craving. And this is in the Anguttara Nikaya, uh, Book of Fours, number 199. Monks, I will teach you craving, the ensnarer that has flowed along, spread out and caught hold, with which this world is smothered and enveloped like a tangled skein, a knotted ball of string, like matted rushes and reeds, and does not go beyond transmigration, beyond the plains of deprivation, woe, and bad destinations. Listen well, and I will speak. Yes, Lord, the monks responded. The Blessed One said, and which craving is the ensnarer that has flowed along, spread out, and caught hold, with which this world is smothered and enveloped like a tangled skein, a knotted ball of string, like matted rushes and reeds, and does not go beyond transmigration, beyond the plains of deprivation, woe, and bad destinations. These 18 craving verbalizations dependent on what is internal and 18 craving verbalizations dependent on what is external. And which are the 18 craving verbalizations dependent on what is internal? Verbalizations is thinking. It's your conceptual thinking. I am this, and it says, dependent on what is internal. There being I am. So the idea of I am good. The concept that you are good. The idea that I might be here. I might be like this. I might be otherwise. May I be. This is in the future. May I be here. May I be like this. May I be otherwise. I will be. I will be here. I will be like this. I will be otherwise. These are the 18 craving verbalizations dependent on what is internal. And which are the 18 craving verbalizations dependent on what is external? There being I am because of this, or by means of this, there comes to be I am here because of this. There comes to be I am like this. I am physically this. This is who I am. I'm not now, it's not the thinking, it's the person. I am otherwise because of this. I am bad because of this. I am good. Now you're making value judgments. I am good because of this. I might be because of this. I might be here because of this. I might be like this because of this. I might be otherwise because of this. May I be because of this. May I be here because of this. May I be like this because of this. This is the planning and the hopes for the future, craving for a future existence. May I be otherwise because of this. I will be otherwise because of this. These are the 18 craving verbalizations dependent on what is external. Thus, there are 18 craving verbalizations dependent on what is internal, and 18 craving verbalizations dependent on what is external. These are called the 36 craving verbalizations. Thus, with 36 craving verbalizations of this sort in the past, 36 in the future, 36 in the present, there are 108 craving verbalizations. This, monks, is craving, the ensnarer that has flowed along, spread out, caught hold, with which this world is smothered and enveloped like a tangled skein, a knotted ball of string, like matted rushes and reeds, and does not go beyond transmigration, beyond the plains of deprivation, woe, and bad destinations. So there you have it. What is craving? Well, there's actually 108 types of craving. And it's whenever you think of I am this, and then I am, and I want this, and I don't want this, and I am this, and I will have that, and it's I, and there's 108 types of the 108 types of the I, and in your meditation you can categorize them if you wish. I'm not sure I would do that, but every time you think of I, 6 are it. Relax, release. There's no such thing as this I. This is a craving mind. As I was telling some of the people in the Zoom retreat, try taking a look at I. What is I? When you have a thought that says I, look very deeply into that thought. Is there an I there? Well, there's kind of an image of you. And there's this kind of, it's not a really pleasant state of mind. It's this sticky kind of craving state of mind. So people say, well, craving is like this force. That's true, but you identify it as your craving. So this tanha, this fire, this grabbing on, you put your image on it and say, oh yeah, that's me, that's I am. So look into what this I am is. And contemplate that. And I think, let's see if there's anything else of, yeah. This is always a good one. What is feeling? When the Buddha was asked what is feeling or Vedana, feeling is anything which can be felt. If you can feel it, that's feeling. Because people say, what is feeling? Is it sensation or what is it? Well, the Buddha said, it's anything that can be felt. And in this fathom-long body, with its perceptions and thoughts, there is the world, the origin of the world, the ending of the world, and the path leading to the ending of the world. In other words, there's nothing out there. It's all in you. That's what you're trying to understand, how you interact with your sense bases, which you then create this concept of the world and everything that's out there. But actually, nothing's out there. It's all from mind. You see images of things out there. Well, that's an image of your mind. So try to look at it as though it's just you that's here. That's 6Ring things. That's feeling things. That is here. Change the perception. You're not a member of all these other people out there. It's actually you're just here and you're observing what is there and you're creating concepts and ideas about things. Sometimes you might see somebody and actually realize there was nobody there. It was like a shadow. Everything's a shadow. And if there's nobody there, then there's nobody that you can be mad at, and there's nobody that you can desire. If there is no self anywhere, this changes the entire perception of things. And at some point, there will be the counterfeit of the true Dhamma. Venerable Sir, this is from the Samyutta Nikaya. What is the reason? What is the cause? Why formerly there were fewer training rules, but more bhikkhus were established in final knowledge, while now there are more training rules, but fewer bhikkhus are established in final knowledge. That's the way it is, Kassapa. When beings are deteriorating and the true Dhamma is disappearing, there are more training rules, but fewer bhikkhus are established in final knowledge. Kassapa. Kassapa, the true Dhamma does not disappear so long as a counterfeit of the true Dhamma has not arisen in the world. But when a counterfeit of the true Dhamma arises in the world, then the true Dhamma disappears. And I think we have a lot of counterfeit Dhamma out there. And our goal in TWIM is to see that the Sukha, not Sukha, the Suttas are in fact the real Dhamma, And all of the commentaries and the things written about them, unless they match them, they're counterfeit Dhamma and to be let go and not to be seen as the true Dhamma. But even at the time of the Buddha, the true Dhamma was disappearing because he kept having to make more rules. So even during his time, the Dhamma was weakening as more and more people got involved that were less pure than, like say, Sariputta or Moggallana. In any case, watch out for the counterfeit Dhamma. If it doesn't match suttas or what you know to be true, then question it. And with that, we will bring this to a close. It's 10 o'clock here now. And we'll continue in with the meditation. Is there any comments or anything before we get started with meditation? I know I threw a lot at you, and there was more to throw, but that's okay. Next week we'll have Delson come in, and he'll be doing another sutta. But I'm intending to bring in Bhante Kusala, who will be giving a talk on some subject, and Bhante Satyananda, they're both TWIM monks, and perhaps other people that I might figure out. So we're going to have a few other people join us on these sessions, and hopefully we'll get some different viewpoints.